lovelies, welcome, and here we're going to learn how to sew an off-shoulder top and a flare skirt without an elastic fabric. So if that is all you want to learn and much more, stay tuned. So here is a fabric that is not stretchy, it is not elastic. So we're going to cut out the waist in a very unique way. And here is a fabric for the top that is quite transparent. So I'm going to use double for the front and then one fabric for the back. So here is the measurement. We have our waist of 32 inches, hip for 44 inches, and bust for 40. Now the reason why I wrote all this down is that if it's an elastic fabric, you can use 32 inches for the waist. If it is not an elastic fabric, you can choose between bust measurement, wear the skirt from the top, or the hip measurement if the fabric is well enough for you to be able to make that wide flare skirt. So in this video, we're going to make use of the 44 inches because we have enough fabric, and we'll use the circumference to solve how much radius we're going to need to be able to get the round figure of 44 inches for the hip line. So now the circumference is 2 pi r, radius is equal to circumference over 2 pi, and pi is 22 over 7, so 44 over 2 times 22 over 7, which is 3.142. That's for the 22 over 7. So 44 divided by 6.284, which will now give us 7.042. Approximately, it's 7 inches. So what I did is the 44 inches, I added an allowance, and which is quite wide. So we're going to work on reducing it. If you want to sew for hip line of maybe 42, 44. So now this is the skirt length. So we're going to add 20. We're going to add 7 inches to the 26 inches of skirt length we had previously, and subtract the waistband we're going to add. Then add the allowances. The allowance we're going to use to sew below. The allowance below is 1 inch. The allowance at the top is 0.5. So that will give us 32.5 inches. So we need to cut out the radius of 7 inches because we want to get the entire. Before you cut it out, you have to measure entirely if it all fits into the height we just mentioned, 32.5. So I measured 32.5 inches length. Then I measured the 7 inches at the rim. Can you see? Using the edge, I measured 7 inches all the way around. So I noticed that it was quite wide. So for you, you'd have to, I added to the hips. The hips is 42 inches. So I added 2 inches to it. So for you, you should reduce it so that you can have the exact radius and have ease in having to wear it too. So this fabric is slightly stretchy, so I should have reduced it rather than putting exactly, because it's not just a chiffon fabric, it has a little stretch to it. So I folded it up 4 times, as you can see, then cut out 7 inches around, then drew it up to measure the length remaining. So the remaining length is meant to be 25.5 inches. For the sewing allowance at the top, that's 0.5 inches at the top, and then 1 inch at the lower part to fold. So measuring 25.5 inches, folded it again in, Still in the same order because it has to fit on the table. I'll cutting it out. Since marking is already there, I use the scissors and I cut it out. So I took it to the weaving machine and weaved all around the fabric. Now for the waistband. So here it is, 5 inches breadth and a length of 32. You can see how slightly elastic it is. Then I sewed the bottom parts of the skirt all around. Here is the waist elastic band to put on the waist rim. So we have 24 inches of it, which is almost half of the hip measurement we're using. You can use exactly half or almost half, so there was no need cutting out the remnant since that was the measurement I had. Now for the waistband, I first sewed the elastic band by the side, close it up again, and sewed it to lock it in. Then taking my waistband, I sewed it by the edge as well, half inch, that 1 inch we added, sewed it out, so half inch all the way. As you can see, I've weaved all around the waistband. Same thing with the skirt. The skirt base. So I folded it and the right side up, not the wrong side, the right side up, and then sewed from the top half an inch. Not the rims, but the top half an inch. As you can see the opening there, so I sewed the place where there is no opening. I sewed half an inch all around through the rim after locking it at the beginning, as you can see. After I was done sewing it, I opened it up and put the waistband that has already been locked at the edges, and then placed it inside and started sewing around like eating butter and bread. Then sewing by half an inch, so leaving the elastic band in the middle, locked in. Then sew the half an inch all around the rims by half an inch. So the more you sew, you'd see how, as you're raising it up, you can see how the elastic band is fitting into it perfectly. And then I'll draw it in to sew the remaining parts. So we're done sewing the elastic band ribs. So here it is, the finished product of the elastic band. Then I brought this skirt. It was white, so I already chipped up little bits to make it fit into the size I wanted. Then place the elastic band and sew. You know that the waistband is exactly the measurement of the hip. So we're done sewing around. So I placed it on the sewing machine and sewed around that edge, that waist line edge with just sew, so that it can be locked in even more. We're done sewing the rim. So I wanted it to still have little line on the elastic band. So I wanted it locked in even more and looking more beautiful. My choice. If you don't want that, you can leave it this way. This is still beautiful. So I sewed in the midpoint of the elastic band by stretching it out and sewing atop the elastic band and the fabric. So I sew that all around till the end. Now here is our top. So I cut out the front and the back. So I told you the front I'm going to double it out, and then the back will just be single. Now here is the measurement as seen. So every step of the way I'll tell you, I'll write out the measurements that are on top of the fabric. So at this point it was 8 inches shoulder. The shoulder is 15 inches. So but I added half an inch sewing allowance, which made it 8 inches. That's after dividing 15 by 2, we have 7.5. As you can see, we have 4 lengths of fabric because I doubled the front part. Then for the shoulder, at the top, we have 0.5 inches, that's half an inch, so that we can have sewing allowance at the top. Now from the shoulder point to the upper bust, we have 8 inches. If you want to learn how to cut perfectly, I have a previous video on how to cut a stretchy fabric like this, and from cutting to sewing all the way. So now this is the shoulder to the bust point, which is 10.5 inches. Then we have shoulder to under bust, which is 14 inches. And then shoulder to waistline, 16 inches. Then we have shoulder to the hip line, which is 24 inches. Then at that angle where the line of the shoulder meets the upper bust, I went out by 1 inch. You can go out by half an inch, so it's your choice. So I went out by 1 inch, then came down at the shoulder by half an inch, because the shoulder has to have that slant. Then measuring from the shoulder to the upper bust point, I cut into half the 8 inches, which is 4, and then came in by half an inch, because the front has to have an inner, it has to come in a bit compared to the back. You'll notice in the next when we're cutting out the back part. So I used the curve ruler to join all these points together, like so. So our upper bust is 10 inches. Our bust point is 9.25. Our under bust is 8 inches. Don't mind the 9 inches that was written here to be corrected. And then our waistline is 7.75 inches. So for stretchy fabrics, I use exactly the cutout. So I division of all the works. So you see the measurements at the beginning. I divided all those measurements by 4 and got all these points and did not add an extra allowance to sew it. If it's a non-stretchy fabric, we'll add an allowance for sewing, but if it's a stretchy fabric, so that it can grasp the body better, I cut exactly what I see, and the only places I add is at the arm level and the shoulder level. Now in my previous video on how to cut a tank top, you'd see how to blend the hip and the waist. So you can see, as you can see here, I went down by 2 inches and did a slight curve, then blended it to the hip line. And at the hip line, you'd see I came up by 2 inches, so it doesn't have a sharp, because the hip is not a sharp bend. So I blended it all the way, as you can see, to the hip line. So I made a slightly long top so that it can snuggle into the skirts beautifully and feel like the two outfits are merged. So for the neck depth, I did a 3.5 inches. And then since it's an off shoulder, I left half an inch to sew at the edge of the arm. Then 7.5 inches was measured, and you can see half inch there, and then used the curve ruler to give that beautiful blend, like so. Then I added a 0.5 inches, that's half an inch, for sewing at the rim of the shoulder, the off shoulder. So there's going to be a rim. I'll show you how the rim is cut almost at the end of this video. Then using the front pattern, placing it on the back pattern, I put the ruler to make the back straight. You remember I told you that the front has a curve inside by the midpoint, but the back does not have a curve. So using the ruler, I made it straight at that point, then cut exactly the rim at the end, at the side. There's going to be a dart, the side dart. So the side dart is usually on the front pattern, then the back pattern does not have a side dart. You'd see how I I'm able to drag it down and handle the back. So you can see here, half an inch was added to the back part. So I made the back slightly longer than the front to be able to maneuver it. So when you're cutting out your pattern for the back part, ensure you add at least 1 inch length for the back so that you can be able to maneuver, like I'll show you next. You can see through the video I put a pin on, or since it's a stretchy fabric, an elastic fabric, you'd notice that it will be moving, or it will give you a little stress if you don't pin it down. So you have to pin down your fabric to be able to handle this. Then drawing the front pattern down a bit, like so. Trim the shoulder out and cut out the excess of the shoulder all the way down, because when you sew your dart in front, it's the front part is shorter than the back. So this is the way you maneuver it. And then for the off shoulder part of the back, I cut out a little bit of the rim again so that the shoulders will be blended and beautiful. So here is the back and the front pattern of the top, and here is the sleeve. So you can see the sleeve length. You can see 5 inches based on the sleeve measurement, and then 4.5 on the rim. So I didn't put everything in here because it would just become an hour video, so I had to maneuver it. So here's a rim for around the shoulder. You can see how I sewed it. First I sewed it by the edge, then bent it by the middle and sewed the midpoint all around like this to give this beautiful top. And folded the arm like this, and voila, we have our skirt and our top. So thank you for watching. In our next video, we're going to show you a pattern for sewing trousers. Thank you.